Hello there and welcome. I'm gonna go through some Frostwall stuff because I don't really feel like it's a skill that has had its fair shot, and I think it's very useful. I really enjoy it. So the first thing, which if you watched my Palace video, you probably saw me doing this, that you can do with Frostwall, is you can limit the number of things that enter the room. You see, there's more guys in there, but as soon as I put up a frost wall, the melee guys all turn and walk away. And sometimes it'll be the case that there are things that have flicker strike or pierce or, what have you. And so they can break through these walls, but the AI isn't really set up to handle that. If you don't have a way to walk to the enemy, they'll just turn around and start walking away. So, yeah, if you just leave your frost wall in the doorway, just renew it every few seconds so that it doesn't run out of duration, you can just kind of keep melee guys from entering your room. Even in areas that aren't doored, you can kind of treat them as having their own door that only you can open and close. The second way that Frostwall can be useful is against ranged enemies. You'll see, if you look, there are a couple of skeletal archers up there on that ridge. Oh, here, this Flame Harbinger. He's shooting at me right now, but it can't actually, well, now he can't actually hit me because there's walls in the way. So he just shoots and shoots, and this is what the AI tells all ranged enemies to do. It tells them to just sit there and shoot until they start hitting things. Okay, this can be especially useful because whereas this wall blocks most projectiles that enemies throw at it, it does not block Incinerate Totem or Flame Totem's projectiles at all, because they pierce. So you kind of have a one-way, it's kind of like a one-way filter on projectiles. It stops them from hitting you, but it doesn't stop you from hitting them. Kind of cool. The next way that Frostwall can be useful, and I'm gonna try to find there's one. Find one of these reanimator guys, though I'm not sure. Let's see if I can get him to move out of the way for a minute, because I don't actually want to kill him right now. You can prevent guys from running away. Now in this case it was the middle of a room, so it was kind of hard to tell what I was going for there. But sort of the same way you can use walls to keep guys away from you, you can use walls to keep guys from running from you too. And in fact, you can use both at the same time. If you have a map like this one that has lots of little tight spaces, you can block the door, or you can block there, and you can block back there. So now guys, even if they want to walk away, they can't, right? But they also can't go towards you. They're kind of stuck in a little hole where you can shoot them as much as you want to, and they can't run. That rare guy right there just died. He tried to run away, but he couldn't because there was a wall behind him. Same deal here. If you played StarCraft 2, the uses of Frostwall and the uses of Force Field are remarkably similar. This is not so useful at my level. If you already have super good gear and are running high-level maps, like, seriously, who cares? The fight is going to be over one way or another in about 2 seconds. But when you're leveling up, and your totems have fairly low health, deal fairly low damage, and enemies deal comparably higher damage, you're going to use this a lot. If you're, if you want to level. If you don't want to level, then, I would suggest playing another build. But, yeah. I know for most of the 40s, what I would do right before I would enter a room is the first thing I would do is I would set up a frost wall, and then I would put 2 totems behind it. It's the first thing I would do before I entered every room. This makes for fairly low clear speeds, but it's safe. Your totems stay alive. They will kill everything given enough time. And a lot of what can be in a room like that is blocked by I forgot what I was saying. Right, most of the enemies, most of the things enemies can do is blocked by one single frost wall placed in front of your totems. It's useful to note that in situations where you don't actually want the melee enemies to run away, because, for example, you want to still be able to damage them, you can put a wall like this right here, where there's still a little gap at the end for the enemies to walk around, because it's only if you completely shut them out like this, so there's no gaps on either side. If there's a little gap here or a little gap here, the melee enemy will still try to get to you. So that can be very useful if you have especially slower enemies who you'd like to have just walk around in front of your frost walls. And if you have low enough duration, you can switch between having, like a little gap on this side, and then when this one expires, having like a little gap on the other side over here. So frost wall placement and learning how to use this skill well is one of the most interesting parts of this build, and I think it could amplify a lot of totem builds, because I do think one of the reasons that more people don't play totem builds, part of it is effectiveness, sure, because you will not get the same level of effectiveness as an elemental buzzsaw character or the like. And it does have particular problems with, but anyway, but I think it gives you something to do that is very interesting, because it's not just so many of the skills in this game, like Incinerate, like Spectral Throw, like most active skills, are, they're handguns. You point and shoot, and that's the end of it. This is a very strategic tool that we have, If we learn how to use it well, it doesn't just make fighting efficient. It does make fighting efficient, but that's not all it does. It makes fighting interesting. It makes positioning and strategy and choosing where your battles are going to be. It makes that a very relevant decision. All of a sudden, if there are guys down here, my choice of whether to fight here or to fight here is a really meaningful one because I have this door that I can wall. Whereas, you know, a lot of other builds, that decision is relatively meaningless. Because, you know, whether you're fighting them on one side of the door or the other, you know, it might mean they get a quicker surround on you, but ultimately it's the same. You're hitting the same button to kill them, and you're hitting it the same number of times, regardless of where they're standing. Unrelated note to Frostwall, and this isn't as big of a deal as it used to be, but for anyone who is trying to play this build and is having trouble with flicker strikers like the ones who just hit me, though I'm not having any trouble with them because of my life pool, you'll notice in my near naked videos I use skeleton totem a lot, and that will really help with flicker strikers because there's more targets for them to flicker strike. I am going to get to the boss, and when I get to the boss, this is an interesting boss to play against with Frostwall because she has both a melee form and a ranged form. Her melee form has a piercing spell, so you can't just put a Frostwall totem in front of her, or Frostwall. You can't just put a Frostwall in front of her and have her be unable to reach you like against most melee enemies because she'll just Ice Spear you instead. Though again, the same thing I said before about the AI still holds true. If you put a Frostwall in front of her so she can't walk to you, even though she can shoot spells at you, she won't. She'll walk away. And then her second form is a spellcaster, which also has piercing spells, that tries to run away. It tries to run away a lot. And this boss, for me, got to be a lot shorter of a fight when I learned how to use Frostwall to pin her up against my totems. So we'll see that here momentarily. I think I'm getting close to the end of this area here. Killed a lot of these guys. You'll notice that I also use Cold Snap Trap a lot. Cold Snap Trap and Frostwall have very similar purposes. Their job is to protect the totems. They try to prevent them from keeping damage, or from being damaged. But you'll note, like right there, there's too much damage in that room for and there's, you know, too many champions that I can just freeze them for a long length of time and have that be fine. However, if instead of being white enemies, or if instead of being champions those were white enemies, you know, Frostwall wouldn't have been as useful as Cold Snap Trap, because I could just Cold Snap Trap, freeze them all, and they'd be dead by the time they came unfrozen to incinerate totems TPS. A lot of this, I've got to say, this character is making it look a little bit easy here because he's got a lot of gear. But when I was first starting out, I would do a lot of this kind of, there are enemies in the corner of the map kind of a thing, and I'm limiting my exposure to them as much as possible, like what I did just there with most totem builds don't have a way to, if an enemy runs past your totems, you kind of just wait for them to kill you. Or for you to kill them. It's kind of a race, one way or the other. Whereas, if you have Frost Wall, create walls surrounding you, and you can actually just keep them away. It's a really useful skill. I'm surprised that I'm the only one who kind of thinks that. Maybe it's because I play with totems, maybe with non-totem builds. This skill is worthless or something, but I kind of don't think so. Especially when we're, living in an age of trigger gems and such. I find it difficult to believe that no one finds cast when damage taken level 1 Frost Wall to be a useful thing. Maybe that's the case, but... that looks like Mervale's room up ahead. So, in Mervale's room, there's also going to be a ton of champions, which means that, once again, we're in a situation where I could try to use Cold Snap Trap, but there's going to be a lot of enemies in there, and most of them are probably going to have pretty high health. So, the, Cold Snap Trap, in that case, is not really sufficient to keep our totems alive. It will keep us alive for a little bit, but when you're fighting a boss pack, you kind of have to be a little bit more... You have to stay alive for more than a little bit. Okay, here's the boss room. Sometimes I can get her to just walk out here. And then... notice that Ice Spear, when she casts it from back there, when it hits its second form, it can't pierce the walls. So... this is also something I hadn't mentioned before. If you do have to wall off entirely like this, a good thing to do if you're against melee enemies is to have one totem in front of the wall and one totem behind the wall. So one totem is there for melee guys to stick around and fight. That is if you're in a tight spot so that you can't you can't do the thing I was showing you before where you leave a little gap on one side. So here is Mervale. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put totems right up in her face, enfeeble her and weakness her. I hope the totems take her down, and keep a frost wall right in front of me so that her second form of ice spears can't hit me. I don't need to do this because, like I say, I'm really well geared. But for a newer character, you're gonna want to be worried about her freezing you. Okay, so now we've cleared out the room. So we just have her left. Once again, frost wall. Oop, not quite far enough. And down she goes. Now I'm going to summon 2 fresh totems, and as soon as she pops into her 4th phase, I'm going to put 2 frost walls right behind her so that she can't run away. And down she goes. It's a little tricky to get the frost walls behind her because, let's see, I think this is the end. It is. Because if you click right on an enemy like this and you cast frost wall on them, it will summon the wall in front of them and push them back, which is not, in this case, what you want. You want the 2 walls behind. If my character is Mervale, you want the 2 frost walls behind her so that she can't walk away, and the 2 totems are on either side of her. So you want to wall her down into the totems. So you, generally you probably want to click about here and here, off to either side of her, instead of right behind her. The temptation is to but then her portrait is so tall that when you go to click up here, you're probably actually selecting her. So instead of putting the wall behind her, it'll appear in front of her, and she'll just walk away. Anyway, this is my frost wall tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you feel better about frost wall now than you did when you started watching this video. Thanks, bye.